Oh, I'm so glad you came by today, Skip and Tillman of the Bash Brothers. You know, today's very special for families in America because we all get together, drive for many miles to see Grandma and the family and smell a turkey and pumpkin pie. It's Thanksgiving here in America, but a lot of folks probably are pretty stressed because they had to sit around the table with relatives that didn't see the world the way they did. Why is that so stressful?
I don't know. In our family, we like to talk about things that are super controversial. We actually find great joy in doing that.
Politics and religion, we talk about that all the time.
And I think it's unfortunate, but people avoid it. Why not keep an open mind about things? Why not talk about things? Why not see things from other perspectives?
But I think that right there is the problem. Most people today think that their opinions and thoughts are right. And they, especially with the internet nowadays, you can seek out
reaffirmation
of those thoughts and feelings. So people have lost the ability to say, you know what? I want to hear somebody out. I know that it's going to be different, but that's okay, right? I want to hear what their thought process is. And even if I don't learn their process and take away their same opinion, I can still benefit from the way that they think and the points that they bring up.
But what if your relatives are like crazy?
But what,
all the better dinner conversation, right?
Exactly. I mean, what's crazy? That's their opinions. That's their reality. That is true to them. Who are you to say that that is not their truth? Yes, you can disagree with it, but that doesn't mean that it's less true to them, and that's okay.
And
Tillman, far left, far right. Are you going to defend far left, far right in that remark?
I think that they could have a conversation if they came into that conversation with that thought that I am not necessarily... I believe my thoughts and feelings are true to me, but I am willing to accept that somebody else's thoughts and feelings are true to them, right? It's your reality. Who am I to say that your reality is wrong?
What if they're just wrong?
A year ago, people were shooting each other, setting people on fire, running people over with cars because of our political situation. So at Thanksgiving, we had such turmoil last year that I hope in this conversation we can talk about how we can get through this with perhaps either not talking about politics or talking about it in a way that doesn't do exactly what you guys just pointed out, sets the other person off.
Oh, the Trump divide during last year's Thanksgivings, right?
Look, at the end of the day...
People got divorced because of it.
At the end of the day, the problem I see is this. We're not talking to each other. And what ends up happening is when you have a controversial topic, you end up going straight to fighting. There's no conversations anymore that occur.
So that's because of the technology issue we've been hammering on.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
Actually, that's a good point. In technology, when you're writing something online, it's a very one-way conversation. People are used to that. I'm going to say my piece, and I can back away after that point, and not read another word or listen to anything else.
Exactly. It's the Twitter. I can put my thought out there and then just tune the rest out. You're not having conversations with people, and that, of course, when you're not opening your mind to the ability to understand the other person's point of view. And if you disagree with them, you tend to go right to conflict.
And everybody can be in a different limited hangout. So I'm going to gravitate towards the messaging in my area of the internet that resounds with me, and that's my hangout, and you might be in another one and another one. But when you get together as family around the dinner table, then you have to meet them in your hangout.
If you were a strong spiritual thinker, you would take yourself out of your comfort zone. Put yourself in the comfort of somebody else. Understand their position. Expose yourself to something that maybe might make you feel uncomfortable. Right. Because by understanding the other person, you're able to have a dialogue. And that's what we're missing. Look at world leaders. Do you think Trump and Kim Jong-un could sit around and have a conversation? No, because they come from totally different perspectives.
I look at it as a win-win, right? You either come away learning something from them, or you learn that what they're telling you, you still don't believe in, and you only reaffirm your own belief. But it's okay to listen and hear somebody who has a different opinion.
Here's a rhetorical question. Whatever happened to debate clubs?
Well, I wrote down the word debate, actually, because I had an interesting experience recently. I was dating somebody, and she always was a little bit off-put by the conversational tone that we have around our family dinner table, which is a very back and forth kind of debate. And there's a negative connotation to the word debate nowadays, right? Debate isn't unhealthy. It isn't arguing. It can be differences of opinion, but just because you have a difference of opinion doesn't mean that you're arguing.
Isn't the goal of a debate to take two different perspectives and make a better solution from it?
Absolutely. Skip and Tillman, you nailed it. Because I'm an old guy, I can tell you that process is called the dialectic process.
Hey guys, am I late for dinner?
No, we're talking Thanksgiving, so you showed up just in time, you know.
Oh.
And what we're talking about is a big topic, but really, we're talking about dialogue. Dialogue, and the dialectic process is exactly as Skip and Tillman have just described it. And they described it as having contentious points of view.
Mm-hmm.
Without contention, there's no resolve, there's no growth.
Without debate, you don't learn anything.
Correct. And also, the dialectic process is thesis, you state your idea. Antithesis, somebody might state the opposite idea, and then after a dialogue, the dialectic process, you come to a middle synthesis. And that is so forgotten. People just want to stand up and preach their opinion and not listen to the other. And one other thing I'll add here. They've now proven that unless there's a bone, there's more bones to the ear than they know. So when the bone is connected to the body, there's a place there, it was a bone they didn't know of. That bone moves. And until you move that bone, you actually cannot listen. That's how you're able to filter out all the nonsense in your environment of sound and can focus on, the sound of your baby upstairs. It's because of this filtering system, because the bone first must move. The ear must be inclined. Literally, the bone must move before you listen. And people don't move that bone. Guess what? Using an iPhone ossifies that bone, so you can't listen afterwards. Another illness that we were talking about that came out of technology is the fact that we are ossifying our brain, basically, by using a phone or sitting in front of a screen. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, people won't hear what they don't want to listen to. When people look at a screen, they'd rather look up the news and have their feed show them exactly what they want to see. Any dissenting opinions, any ideas or concepts that go against their idea of what the world should be is so outrageous and triggering that we have to stop people from seeing it.
Are you sure you don't need a safe space right now?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I can go send the timeout.
Is that snowflakes? I see.
Exactly. I mean, heck, even at college, there are so many topics that are inappropriate to talk about. There was just this lady the other day up in some Canadian university, figures it's Canada, and she was being almost fired because she brought up the concept that there are people that have different opinions.
Well, we saw the thing with Apple recently. It was a vice president who basically was talking about the diversity doesn't necessarily mean exclusively race, gender, etc. Diversity could be like us, just sitting around. We're all one family unit. We're sitting around, right, talking about things. We all have diversity of ideas. Diversity, by definition, is not based on color, race, religion, and all that good stuff. It's life experiences, and those life experiences that bring you to have a diverse opinion.
You're so right. It's if you have people of different races and religions, but they all have the same ideology behind them, you're not having a diverse group. You can't have that open discussion.
Well, and I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You're not learning, you're not building upon your knowledge if you never expose yourself to outside opinions. You're going to be stuck in that zone, right? Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love to hear, people's opinions and thoughts that are different than mine, because I'm fascinated with people's logics and, how they think about things, right? Because at the end of the day, while their conclusion may be different, I'm still looking at a problem in a new way that they exposed me to.
And it may bring up a better way to do things or a different idea. I
Absolutely.
mean, that's the whole thing. And that goes back to healthy debate, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're bypassing the conversation and we're going straight to locking horns like we do during Thanksgivings around many tables, right? So what happened in our country to the conversation?
I have an honest belief, and this belief is that every person, deep down under, regardless of their ideology, their religion, their concepts that they hold so dear to them, we have the similar opinions. We want what's best for people. People aren't inherently evil. They don't want bad things for individuals simply because they want bad things to happen. Everyone has the same humans should be happy. People should, kind of share and do things well. It's what order and how you get there that achieves things that makes these differences. Everyone believes that the life that people live should be better than what it was before. But some people think that starts in the home. Other people think that starts across the border. You just have to decide where you're going to start your march and what your ideologies are going to set you towards. And that's what this conversation kind of has. You bring a person into a room, you talk about it, and you realize that, oh, wait a minute, we do want the same thing. We want people to be happy. But I just want to start that in my family where I can affect it the most.
Well, and again, maybe that's what's been lost nowadays, right? If everybody's seeking out self-confirming news articles and things like that, and you see all the problems that are happening in the Capitol today, you lose the ability to compromise. And compromise starts with what you're saying, is first identifying what is our common ground. What is our common goal, and how do we achieve that through compromise? And maybe that's what's been lost.
Well, in another video, we were talking about the technology divide, right? Okay. To this conversation that we're having right here, how many online ads that are targeted to you, they grab your metadata, right? You're on whatever, it's tracking your stuff, right? It, in and of itself, whether it's through news feeds, whether it's through those ads, are reaffirming whatever it is that you're looking at. Again, back to capitalism like we talked about before, right? At the end of the day, it's just reaffirming what you already think you know. You're not going beyond it to say, well, I didn't consider this, or I didn't know this.
And to some extent, I think that's even happening in the world of journalism, right?
Yeah.
Because they have a thought, and then they go seek the proof and the evidence to confirm that thought.
100% agree.
There are still people that do it, but it has been lost to some extent, where people go and they seek out first the evidence and then base an opinion.
Well, they start with the premise. They say, okay, this has to be the premise that we have, and then they go seek out the evidence that reaffirms the premise.
Absolutely.
Here's 101 examples of something evil happening. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that the reasons those happened is because of another reason that's actually the opposite of what I'm preaching. So many people, so many ideologies, when you look at an article, when you look at an opinion column, they say, this is wrong. But they sure as heck didn't talk about the reason, the logic, or why it's occurring.
And I think it's important to point out at this point that everybody that's listening right now, we're not telling you that what you're reading is right or wrong. You should continue to read that. But don't be afraid to go read or listen to a contrary opinion. That can be a good and healthy experience. You get to learn from it, right? Mm-hmm. You get to, either reaffirm your own beliefs or understand a thought process that's different than yours that can only help you out in the future when you think about things.
One of the best things you can do when you see an article, when you see an opinion, you take that little blue link and you click it and you look at the source material.
Oh, yeah.
Read that source material, make your own opinion, see why it is they think that. You, after reading it, might come to a completely different conclusion.
We used to have a funny saying. I worked in market research, statistics basically, and we used to always say, I can create the chart to look whatever I want it to and to prove whatever point I want to. But the details are buried in the footnotes, and you got to read the footnotes. And that's the same thing. Go look at the source. Those are your footnotes. People manipulate whatever story they want it to tell, but once you start to read the source documents, you'll actually see
it's clickbait, right? It's you put out the sizzle of the headline to pull them in, and then you start reading. And then it isn't until you get to the very bottom that you realize, oh, that's where that came from.
Okay, so you're at Thanksgiving dinner, and you incline your ear to the other, somebody that has an opinion that is other than yours, that dialectic process of contention, and you actually listen, and we talked about that. We should probably mention, and you're giving good hints on how we listen. But then the question is, as you say, you look at the source material, when you're talking to another, you can't. And their source material, all they're going to do is give you self-reaffirming news agencies. So the real question of our age to a person like myself is discernment. Now you guys are in two different kind of generational stages, and you have different ways of discernment. When I hear Jonathan here talk about the way that he discerns things, I'm going, I didn't know that existed. I wouldn't discern it that way. The way you guys discern it, totally different than the way that I would discern it. So how is it that you can discern when another is telling you something what's true? I think that's one of the biggest challenges of our age.
I think that you make one good point, which is in a lot of these conversations that people have and why it leads to kind of a destructive tone is that, Skip over here will say, hey, this is my opinion, and here's the facts that I bring to the table to prove it. And Tillman, now I say, no, I disagree. This is my opinion, and here's the facts that I bring. But there's that step in between that's missing, which is, all right, I want to understand what it is, what you're citing. I'm going to learn your different opinion and find out what are those source documents that you're using to base your opinion off of. Now, once I understand that, I can play devil's advocate and point out things that I see that are wrong with that. But people never get to that point. They say, my facts are right. My facts are correct. Yours are irrelevant. I have enough proof with just my facts.
Fake news.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? How do you discern this?
You have to have the mentality. You have to have an open mind that's willing for discourse. And then when it comes down to it, you have to be informed.
I think one other good caveat to that is both people in the conversation have to approach it with the same mindset. Because I've been in many conversations where I feel exactly that way. I'm ready to listen to what their opinion is, and sometimes it works out, but a lot of times if that other person doesn't come to the table with that same mindset, it can lead to a destructive way because they think I'm just trying to tell them they're wrong when I'm listening and trying to understand their point of view.
Or by asking questions to understand them, the fact that you're asking them questions in and of itself is offensive to them, and they immediately turn their mind off.
Well, they become defensive.
Correct.
You're trying to prove that they're wrong, even though you're trying to understand.
But Skip, you hit it on the head. That's the oldest trick in the world. Who's the father of the dialectic process? Socrates. He didn't write anything down. He had conversations, and what did he always do? He would take their point of view, ask them questions until he walked them off the cliff of their illogical thinking. And then they themselves could change. But as you pointed out, Tillman, people don't want to do that. They'd rather fight.
Yeah.
They don't want to change, because changing means you got to change your worldview. You see, everybody, they don't know it, but everybody's got what's called a zeitgeist, a worldview. Well, that's the current worldview, but Weltanschauung, they have a worldview where they have everybody in a box. So when they perceive anything, it has to match up with what's in their box. If they have a perception that they don't know what it is, it's terrifying for them. It's like seeing an animal coming at you that you've never seen before, and he looks like he's going to eat you. That's what the person with the opposite opinion of yours, outside of your own worldview, presents to you.
Speaking of animals and eating, I'm hungry.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap this conversation. And I will say one thing. I think it'd be important this Thanksgiving season, while you're sitting around with the table, take a moment. Try to understand somebody else's point of view. No judgments. No criticism, just do your best to understand why they think the way that they do. So with that, this is Skip and Tillman signing off.